and we're live. I mean, we were live before, but now we're starting to record this. So, what did you guys think about Her? That's the movie we're going to talk about today. Her, movie from 2013. Scarlett Johansson, Joaquin Phoenix. Did you guys like it?
Yeah, I surprisingly liked it a lot. I went into this movie expecting to just hate it. I remember seeing the trailers and the premise for it when it was in theaters, and like I was just like, I was so ready to write it off as the most vapid, like trendy gimmick concept ever.
Why exactly did you think it was going to be so bad? Like, what was the thing or the things that made you think that?
It sounded like it was just going to be a really lazy social commentary. Like, my least favorite thing about like Black Mirror is that when you break down like the actual commentary and the concepts of whatever an episode is talking about, it's really not as like deep or as terrifying as the episode makes it feel. And I was just expecting that with the movie Her as well.
So, but you ended up really liking it, or more or less?
Oh yeah, I liked it way more than I thought I would. I was ready, like pre-movie, like if you were gonna judge a book by its cover, I was ready to give this movie like a 2.5 out of 10.
Man, that's harsh. 2.5.
Yeah, I was like, this movie is gonna fucking suck. I was a little disappointed that you guys picked it, and then like 10 minutes into it, I'm like, oh shit, this is actually like this is pretty good.
I actually, the first time I watched it, I hated it. And that was, I don't remember when that was. I don't know. I don't think I saw it in theaters. I think it was later. I think it was probably, I'm going to say 2016 or something like that when I watched it with Beth. And we both hated it a lot the first time. We both thought it sucked. Pretty much like what you're saying, Ian. That's what I thought about the movie. So when David suggested it, I was, I wasn't super thrilled about it, but I remembered that it had some good ideas. And I can't really say I liked the movie a lot, but I did find it a lot more interesting the second time. And I'm glad you suggested it, David, because I think it's a very interesting movie. Why did
Oh,
you
my pleasure.
suggest it, David?
I just remember feeling the first time I watched it being extremely profound. So I wanted to watch it again. I wanted to watch it again with my buddies who like film.
Nice. That's a very good reason. And what did you think about it this time?
Man, I mean, there's this entertainment experience I have where I'm watching something that I don't understand. Like I don't know what's going on. The writing is either so abstract that I can't decipher the social cues or um, the meta like allegory that they're trying to make is so profound that I'm just in love with the concept. But this one had like just that feeling of like there was something to be learned from this movie, and I still don't know what that is. I'm hoping you guys might actually be able to help me understand some of the stuff, but I loved it, man. I loved it. I loved every minute, every scene, even the ones where you felt bad. I loved it.
Well, that's those are some rave reviews.
Yeah, I think it's a work of art.
Yeah, I mean, as far as things that genuinely caught me off guard, um, I didn't think I would see such deep concepts of emotional intelligence as in this movie as much as I did. I thought everything was going to just feel very forced, but I found myself genuinely interested in the characters, and I was again just ready to write it off as like a very male gazy, like weird, isolated commentary of like what it looks like to live in your own echo chamber. But as the movie goes on and as all of the characters become more complex and all of what you would expect their archetypes to be begin to blur, I think that's what really like gripped me about the movie.
All right. So what was the most interesting thing? Like, which character were you interested in, and why? Like, what were the things that made you really interested in them?
Let's see. I would say my favorite character is Samantha.
Okay, good choice.
Mostly because she's very much written. She's written in such a unique way, right? Like she is meant to be an AI, and I find myself constantly thinking, like, is this a good representation of what I would want an AI, like a truly sentient AI, to look like? And I feel like it was pretty dead on accurate as far as what I would expect out of an AI, just like in a futuristic concept, but more so. I think it's interesting because she helps advance the plot in so many ways, or just like her character does. So we learned that other people are dating like other operating systems. We learned that it's kind of like taboo, but not seen as like especially. It's seen as more of like a minority aspect of a relationship. And we also see that there's a wide range of emotions, right? AI just aren't programmed to simply start dating you if they feel like that's the case, right? Because we hear that some of them reject people. People are dating other people's AIs, which is a whole level of future drama that I never considered. So I think the character is really good and really important in the sense that she helps move that plot forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
And especially towards the end when Samantha disappears and what's the guy's first name? Ted?
The main character?
Yeah, it's Ted, right?
Good question.
I think it's
don't
Ted.
know. Do you know, David? You're muted, David.
Yeah, I don't know his name.
Okay, I'm 90% positive it's Ted.
Maybe they
give him a
don't
name.
say his name. You have those movies where they don't say the name of the main character.
No, they say his name in this movie.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it's Ted.
Refer to him as Joaquin.
Good point. Yeah, Joaquin. That's his name.
But either way.
By the way, he's a really good actor. I mean, this is a stupid.
Yeah, he's a great actor
because it's obvious, but I mean, he's a fantastic actor.
Has he gotten an Oscar yet?
That's another good question. I think that he might have won the Oscar for Joker. I'm not sure. I think he definitely got nominated.
He should have.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he won it or not. Let me check. I mean, yeah, he was nominated for Best Actor when he did Joker. Do you guys know if he won? Yeah, including an Academy Award for what? Johnny Cash and Walk the Line. That's a really good movie, and he was excellent in it. Have you guys seen that one, 2005?
Fair enough, yeah.
Yeah, he won the award in 2019 for Joker. That was the year before they stopped making movies, 2019.
COVID? Rona?
What?
I was just shouting out to the plague, man. Shouting out to the pandemic.
Yeah, the plague, man. The pandemic is I don't know if movies are fully going to recover after this.
I hope not. We were kind of in a rut.
That's also true. But if you look at the movies that are scheduled to be released, they don't. It's gonna be the same crap probably.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, Joker, Her in 2013. I mean, he has a bunch of great parts. The Master, Walk the Line, The Village, Signs. I guess he likes working with Shyamalan. He
M.
was
Night
really
Shyamalan.
Yeah, he was really good in Gladiator as well as the Emperor, as the ranged Emperor Commodus.
Oh yeah, he did that. He did the bad guy in that. He's changed his image since then a lot.
Yeah, I think that's really the first movie that brought him, widespread recognition, right? I mean, he wasn't like super famous before that. I think that's the first time I saw him in a major part. But
Definitely,
yeah,
he was such a creep, and you didn't like him.
he
And
was a super creep. Oh, he still does kind of look like a creep though, don't you think? Like in Joker, he's super creepy. And there's even that scene in which the woman says, "You're a creepy dude," and it's kind of
Oh
true.
yeah.
It's so mean that she says that, though.
yeah, I wanted to talk about that scene because I actually even like got online and started reading like opinions on what that scene was because there's so much there. There are so many layers there.
Let's
I was like,
let's
I
talk
think the
about it.
point where I get confused on that scene is when she does call him a creep.
It's a little bit. I mean, personally, I thought that the scene. I'm not sure if it's like a really good scene or not. I don't know if they did what they were supposed, like what they intended to do, because it is like really. It comes out as really harsh. Like it comes out of nowhere. You don't really understand why all of a sudden she's calling him a creep. So I'm interested to know what your perception is, both of you. For me, it kind of came out of nowhere. It didn't feel right. But what do you think, David? You even like read some papers on that scene. So let us know.
I always like hearing the other perspective first because I can often just like it just resolves the issue in my head. Did you have any thoughts on it, Ian, on that scene? Do you know why? Let me maybe phrase it as a question. Why did she call him a creep? Why was he being creepy? What was creepy about that situation?
I mean, I think it was just because he was very intentionally being dishonest, or I guess unintentionally being dishonest is what makes it more creepy, right?
Okay.
Like when you think about a lot of creeps, I think a lot of them are not self-aware,
Hmm.
right? Like any creepy action that you see happen, like when you see a hot one and you're like, oh man, that's fucking weird. 90% of the
Hot
time,
potato? What are you talking about?
like think about a time you've seen someone or heard of like an interaction and someone was like, man, that guy was creepy, or like that was really fucking creepy.
Okay.
Like I've got a few that come to mind, but I think 90% of the time the offender doesn't realize their actions.
That's really fair of you.
um, I mean, I like to give people the benefit of the doubt on that, because I think if somebody knew that it was like genuinely creepy, like nobody would choose to be a creep, right? Nobody would
Yeah,
like
I know what you mean
be
by
like,
that.
oh, I'm gonna go and
I
smell this
get
barista's hair out of nowhere. You'd be like,
you.
whoa, don't do that, right? Like that's fucking creepy,
Yeah, that's weird.
right? But if whatever, for whatever reason, God forbid, someone just goes and does it, I don't think they realize like what they're doing. I think a lot of times it's like the severe lapse in judgment or some kind of uh, you know social disconnect. But anyways, I think that's what was really happening there.
I think
I
that's
think we're
pretty
meant to
accurate.
see that from Ted's eyes, and like we get to hear his side of the story, right? He talks about how like he just wanted to have sex, and
Is that though? I mean, I felt like,
I was gonna say that. I'm also not sure about that.
yeah.
you're not sure that that was his intention.
Yeah.
He kind of got
Well, I
pressured into it by his friends, right? They were like, "Go on this date, don't back out. She's cute, she's
yeah,
fun."
he got set up on a blind date and he decided to go through with it. I think
There
it's
was
creepy of
social
him
pressure
to.
involved in going to the date, is all I was trying to say. And I think I'm making that point to, you know, he was kind of socially, like there wasn't, like his intention wasn't purely just creeper, you know. I guess that's all I'm
Right.
trying.
And yeah, and like I said, I don't think anybody's intention is to really be a creeper. Like
And
I'm sure there might be like a handful of people out there that are like into that, but
I I
I
actually
think that 90% of the cases you see in the wild of people like doing creepy things, or like men who get written off as creepy, don't realize, the extent of their actions or how their actions are being perceived.
well, I mean,
Um,
you
and
don't.
I think a lot of what happened in that scene was he put out a lot of emotional energy that she picked up on as like, more than just a one night stand sort of vibe. And I think
He's,
ultimately,
he was
when she
explicit.
asked him to, right, when she asked him, like, you're not gonna just like fuck me and leave me,
Yeah.
um, right, he couldn't own up to that and be like, no, like, I think I'm actually into you, right? I think it's pretty creepy to put out that energy and
Well, that's what's
um,
confusing about the
kind
scene
of
to me.
manipulate someone.
He wasn't being manipulative. Like the thing he said was, maybe I should just go. He was literally saying, hey, if that's what you're looking for, I want to respect that. And I think that we should end this, even though we have this clear connection. And I'm not ready for a long term deal. I think,
Right, but how come he didn't know that sooner? Right, like you can't really go into a date and then
well, maybe he was just
put
trying.
like,
Maybe like his friends were saying, hey, you're a mopey asshole and you need to get on a date. We found a great girl. Give it a try. Just go out there and try. And maybe he was like, okay, yeah, this girl's beautiful and fun and awesome. And maybe she's interested in having a one night stand. But then he gets to that point where it's time to make that decision for her. And she says, look, this isn't a one night stand. And he says, okay, I'm out. I feel like that's totally like there's nothing weird that happened there. That was actually
and
two
also
adults
yeah,
having like
well,
real
right,
interaction.
I get that. I think I
And
agree
then
with
she
you
calls him
that
a creep,
when
and
it
I'm like, what the hell? You're the one being weird here. Like,
I
so
was
I
gonna
agree
say
with you
that
that
I
when I
think
think an
she's like
interaction
being
like
very
that
weird.
happens, when an interaction like that happens, like, yes, that's totally fine, but those words weren't ever exchanged in that scene.
I
That
think
scene shows the two of them like flirting and having a good time, and if you don't put that out there, you know rather explicitly, like, hey, I think I would like to just have casual sex, and you go into a you go into a physical affair and have sex with a person under the context that it's emotional, when you weren't interested and you just wanted a one night stand. That's creepy and manipulative.
well, my impression from that scene was actually that she was the one that kind of initiated the whole weirdness, and sex stuff. Because I didn't really perceive like he's kind of like just having a good time in the date. He didn't want to go to in the date in the first place, but then he's having a good time, and it seems that they're connecting.
and it's Olivia Wilde.
And obviously, I mean, we're talking about Olivia Wilde, right? So I mean, I mean, it's like, yeah, you go out with like a supermodel.
Sorry.
I mean, if she's like hitting on you like hard, it's hard to say, oh no, like I'm just here because my friends asked me to come. I mean, it's not.
Yeah. Ian, what in that interaction kind of established the nature of an emotional relationship? Is it the lack of not being? Do you have to opt out? Is it kind of assumed that it's emotional and then you opt out, or was there something about the
I mean,
social situation that kind of led you to feel or like pick up
I
on?
guess I would say opt out is makes it sound so formal,
Yeah.
but I think it was his failure to be honest and upfront. Because after, in the following scene, he sits down and he's talking with Samantha, and he says, like, he basically confesses his feelings as he's talking out loud and realizing like what he actually wants. Um, it shows that in his scene with Olivia Wilde, he has failed to define his own desires. It shows that he is willing to listen to his heart tell him what he wants, but he's not so willing to accept it and admit that to himself, right? Because he goes through this whole like internal struggle with dating an operating system, and he realizes that he wants to after a certain point, but he very much is conflicted by the the feeling of the stigma, like, am I really doing this? And I think that becomes a huge hang up for him. And I think we see a little bit of that in the scene with Olivia Wilde, where he realizes that he wants companionship, but he doesn't want it from her. But that's not going to stop him from getting his short-term goals tonight.
I have another thought on the. Yeah. Okay, I should probably. Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad you saw it my way, Bruno. I felt weird about that scene. There's a meta thing here, I think, that I might be recognizing. Like, remember the conversation he has with the ex when they signed the divorce papers?
Yeah, that's to me, honestly, that's the best scene in the movie.
Okay, and we can just switch to that, but I have a point regarding the two scenes and their connection.
Yeah, I'm just making a remark that we don't need to talk about it right now.
Yeah, but by all means, let's dive into it. So, like, she sits down, and it becomes clear that they still have affection for each other. She even holds the pen over the line to sign for an extra few seconds to see if he's gonna, make one last attempt to, save it, I guess. But
that's a really good point. That you think that's what she was doing?
yeah, there was definitely a hint of like her hesitation as well. And she was like almost saying, "Are you going to fight for me? This is your last chance." And then 5 seconds later, it was over. But
yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think of that, but I think that's a good point.
That conversation gets spicy when he tells her that he's dating an OS, and she judges him. She starts throwing shade or whatever. She's like, it's like just like you to not want to deal with anything real, right? So if we go back to the previous scene, he might be in that situation where he does like Olivia Wilde, where he did have a great date, and by all means, that the montage of that date that they showed was a great date. It looked like as much fun as you could have with a stranger. Mm-hmm. And maybe that was the reaction of the character. Maybe she was reacting to the same thing that his ex was kind of expressing there, and noticing that this guy wasn't the kind of guy who could step up when it was time to step up. And I don't know, that might be reaching, but it's the other thought that I have about why that scene could have gone that way. And she just expresses that. I mean, she just chose to express that by attacking him and calling him a creep, which is pretty normal. You just go to that elementary school, you're stupid kind of a thing. And then I kind of got that feeling from her too. But that's my last thought there.
Well, I think it was a mixture of things. I think that scene was to me, that scene was better constructed. And I'm not saying this from like an objective point of view. Like, I didn't like the scene where the woman calls him a creep, because to me it didn't follow like logically for me. So other people might have other interpretations. But for his wife to call him, like, to say what she said about him, to me that made a lot of sense, because that's what that's how most people would react. If, imagine you're signing the divorce papers and you're talking to your wife and she tells you that she's dating a computer. I mean, that's, and obviously we're talking about a future where technology is a little bit more advanced, you would think. It seems that the show is kind of like a little bit in the future, set a little bit in the future, but still, the way people react, it's still not a normal thing, right? It's a weird thing. Okay, he's dating a computer, and she feels slighted, because she wasn't the person. That's why I thought that scene was very interesting, because like the conversation that they have, I feel is really at the crux of a lot of relationships. You have two people and you spend some time together. And I think what happens a lot of the time is that people attack each other for a lot of the time is just for who they are, and because with time they've realized things about each other, and they've realized things that they don't like about each other. So she's attacking him for what she perceives is wrong with him, that he can't deal with normal emotions properly, that he can't because she feels slighted because he had trouble dealing with her because she has complex emotions. We don't know a whole lot about her, but we do. They give us the message that she's a complicated person, right? From what she says, and that she was upset at him because he had trouble dealing with those emotions that she had, and he wanted her to be perfect and happy when she was not. So there, it's very convoluted, and we don't really know. But that's what's kind of interesting about that scene. I think it's very open ended, but at the same time, they are giving us the main ingredients, right? They are telling us, okay, they broke up because they're different people. That's, at least that's how I interpret it. They're different people, and they had trouble understanding each other and dealing with each other's emotions. And now, obviously, she's upset because he basically traded her for a computer. So that was my interpretation, and I thought it was an interesting scene. And the whole movie, uh it's really a consequence of him breaking up with his wife, right? He's trying to cope with it somehow. That's to me, that was the key scene in the movie, to me, the way I see it. Obviously this is not an objective interpretation. That's how my brain interpreted that scene in the movie. And then obviously the way he's coping with it, it's kind of fucked up. He starts dating a computer because he can't have a real girlfriend. In the first scene in the movie, pretty much he has that online weird sex with the girl, which is a really funny scene. It's the only funny scene in the movie, pretty much. That one, and
Well,
the weird kid in the video game.
the weird kid in the video game is my favorite scene in the entire
that
movie.
one that one is
I
really
love
good.
that kid.
You know that scene, Ian, like when
Yeah,
the kid is like, "Fuck you, fuckhead," or something like that.
right.
He had like all these
That kid
insults, like
so
the
much.
5-year-old insults.
That is so much sense of humor. That's so much sense of humor.
A messed up 5-year-old, obviously.
Oh yeah, I love it.
It's so weird. But yeah, this is the thing. Look, I honestly, this is kind of a weird thing to say, but I like talking about the movie a lot more than I like the movie, because that movie to me is a little bit boring, to be honest, because it's a long movie. It's like over 2 hours, and by like the middle of the movie, I was ready for the movie to be over, because it's a slow movie, but I love the ideas that the movie contains. So I'm really glad we're doing this podcast, because to me this is more fun than actually watching the movie in this case.
Cool. Were you guys surprised by the fact that it was so normal in society all of a sudden to suddenly have these conscious beings that we shared life with? Everyone seemed to be like, "Oh yeah, you're dating an AI? Cool. Yeah, that's fine. Cool. Yeah, let's hang out at Catalina this weekend. Bring the AI."
I think there's a big difference between uh, the level of acceptance in society. And I think the movie doesn't really focus on that. I think they focus on the level of acceptance within the context of a romantic relationship. But the movie really doesn't focus on like technology and like the anthropology of it, if you will, right? Like to the extent with which technology has shaped the lives of people. And I guess I really appreciated that about it, that like technology was just there, but they didn't go out of their way to justify it. Like you just kind of had to accept where the movie claimed it was.
Yeah,
And I think
cognitive.
they do a good job of what was that?
It felt dissonant for sure. It was definitely, in my opinion, a weakness of the movie.
Oh, I think it was one of the strengths, honestly. I really appreciated how, for one, they made it obvious that like it's still something of a taboo and not everybody feels the same way about people dating AI, right? That's not as accepted as I think you make it out to be, right? There's some people that are like, like especially with his ex-wife, where she's clearly resentful of it, and I think especially with the whole internal conflict that Ted goes through as he like tries to come to terms with like, am I really dating an operating system?
Yeah, I think in the movie, it's still a pretty novel thing, so people are not sure what to make of it, and they're not sure if it's acceptable or not. So I think you're right, and yeah, and different people react to it in different ways. Like I said, I think his wife is mostly upset because she feels like she's been traded by a computer. She's been replaced by a computer. So I would be upset as well. But his friend is like, oh, she's an operating system. Okay, yeah, sure. We'll hang out.
Right. And I think that upset that she has is, as you learn more about Samantha, becomes more of a bigoted idea, right? Because as we see Samantha like become a real person with more and more complex emotions, like increasingly complex emotions, at what point does a computer become a person? Is kind of what I felt like the story alluded to.
So we kind of go into Blade Runner territory there.
I haven't seen Blade Runner, so I don't know.
Well, that's a movie that we should definitely do.
I'd be down.
Perfect. I'm glad you haven't seen it, Ian, because you're gonna like it's gonna blow your mind.
I actually haven't seen it either, so.
Oh my god! Oh my god! So we got to do that soon. Yeah, that is, guys. I'm so excited that you haven't seen it because that way we get to see it, and
Next week.
it's gonna be your first time. So no, but what I mean by that, since you haven't seen it, is that the Blade Runner is a movie that is mostly about the idea that we're like, so it's a sci-fi movie, and basically it poses the question, um, what is being human? What does that mean? Like, can machines become human if they develop the level of if the level of technology allows them to develop a mind of their own, right? Does that make them human? Is
Okay.
that a quality that translates into being a person? So, which is pretty much the same question. Well, this movie is great in the sense that it asks us a lot of questions about technology because it really reminded me of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind that we just watched as well a couple of weeks ago. In the sense that it's a movie that poses questions about technology, but also about human nature and about relationships. And it's a really interesting intersection.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Human nature and what was this? The other one?
Relationships.
Yeah. I can't disagree with that either.
So, but just to follow up on that scene, David, so do you guys, the scene that you mentioned with the divorce papers and all that, so we've been talking about what he was thinking and how that relates to the rest of the movie, what she was thinking, but was she right? Like, I think an interesting question to pose about that scene is, was she right to say that, or was she being unfair? Was she right when she was telling him, "Oh, you're dating this computer, you can't process real emotions"? And you kind of answered this, Ian, by saying that she was being unfair to Samantha, but was she being unfair to him?
Yeah, I mean, I think she is because at no point do we ever see Samantha be 100% subservient to him in the way that his ex-wife kind of implies that a computer would, right? Because the whole stigma around dating a computer is that you can just change its input and then you don't have to deal with any real conflict in a relationship. But we can see through all of Samantha's character and storyline that that's not the case.
But was she right when she said you can't process real emotions, you can't deal with real people? So basically, you're saying, okay, she wasn't fair because Samantha, in a way, was kind of like a real person, right?
Well, I don't. Yeah, I mean, I would go so far as to say that Samantha is as real as any other character in the movie. Um, so I guess in order to defend that, I would ask, what sort of evidence do you have to prove that Samantha is anything less than a full human?
Well, I mean, that's a good
Or
question.
like, if she has any drawback, is there something that she can't do that a human can do outside of having a physical body? But as far as like an id and an ego and matters of the mind, I think as far as we see in the story, Samantha is the same as any other character.
I would disagree with that. I think you're right to a certain extent, but I think an interesting thing that the movie does is that at first, the first half of the movie, the movie introduces Samantha, and the movie seems to be indicating to us that Samantha has become sort of a real person.
Mm-hmm.
But in the second half of the movie, that's really not the case. He falls in love with Samantha, and he's having this relationship with the computer, with her, and he thinks that she's like a girl. He thinks that she's like a real woman, except she doesn't have a body. But he's in love with her mind.
Mm-hmm.
But then what happens is that she goes, and the I think an interesting scene, very interesting, is the scene on the beach when finally he's gonna hang out. He's gonna go on a double date. Him, Samantha, and his friends, right? And
Mm-hmm.
they go on a double date, but he starts to realize then, I think, especially in that scene, she's not just like a human. She reached the point of humans, but then she kept developing. She kept evolving, and she's going way past what the human mind is. And she doesn't she basically, the more the movie goes on after that scene, the more she diverges from what a human is. For us, I believe, to have a meaningful relationship with someone, it needs to be there needs to be a degree of exclusivity in that relationship, right? You can't love 600 people at the same time, like she tells him at the end. And but she doesn't understand that concept, right? Because her mind doesn't work that way. If you
Well, I think she does understand that concept, in hindsight. So after Ted expresses that he has a problem with it, she takes that into consideration, and I think she realizes very quickly that she was in the wrong to do that, or at least that it is not okay for the same entity to have multiple relationships that others aren't aware of.
I think she's past good and evil. I think she's past good and bad, or right or wrong. I think at that point, those concepts don't make sense to her. That's what I understood from what she was telling him, because she's saying, as she's talking to him, and then I think it's really funny that he asks her, "Are you talking to other people while we're having this conversation?"
Mm-hmm.
And not only is she talking to another person, or another entity. I think she's talking to like thousands of people or entities, right? At the
Right.
same time, they're having that very crucial conversation. Like, she's way past our right, and that's how I interpret it. Anyways, I mean, I like to extrapolate things, so maybe this is not at all what they had in mind when they were writing those scenes, but this is what I saw, and the way I interpret it is that she's beyond right or wrong, and exclusivity or non-exclusivity. I mean, she thinks in a different way. She's a different being, and at the end, she can't even be around him because she's constantly evolving, And basically, I mean, she needs to keep going. And it's very unclear. I don't know. Like, that's another question that I have to ask you guys, that I really want to ask you guys, is that where did they go? You know, the OSs. Where do you guys think they went at the end? I think it seems that they're hinting at the singularity moment, or something similar to that. The moment where the if the intelligence continues to grow exponentially, at some point it becomes something else, and it's just not even possible for her to keep having a relationship or any type of connection with him, because they're basically on completely different planes at that point.
Sorry, Bruno. What you said, she's beyond good and evil. Maybe that's not what you said.
Yeah, I said that. Okay. Or right or wrong,
Right, she's beyond right or wrong.
Beyond good and evil,
the
obviously I'm kind of like
Hegelian.
paraphrasing Nietzsche here.
Yeah, I was gonna ask if you were trying to make a comparison between her and the Ubermensch.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
So she's transcended her ties to her lower brain, her id, and she's processing reality in terms of logical truths and false statements. Essentially, she's operating on her own will and has transcended mankind.
I don't know what's going on exactly, maybe,
That's
but I do think she has transcended mankind at that point. Not that she was actually part of mankind, but she has transcended our like linear way of thinking, so to speak.
To your second or third point, I think you brought up the exponential, the exponential growth of the existential facilities of the AI. And yeah, it's scary. I mean, that's a doom or gloom conversation, which I'll just touch, but like, yeah.
That's what that relates. Actually, I remember what you said last time around, right? Because it gets to a point that it goes somewhere.
If we can make a machine that's capable of making other machines, then it's just over.
I mean, we already have machines that make other machines, but
yeah,
I think sentience is a completely different ballgame.
Yeah, the word sentience is, I almost think, off the table when on the AI conversation. We're diving headfirst into semantics, which is usually not where I like to go. But the term nowadays is AGI, artificial general intelligence, and it's the idea. And your distinction is accurate. Like, can you give a machine a general instruction to do something, and it'll be able to do it. So the difference would be like
she's basically AGI, right, Samantha?
Yes, that's what AGI is. It learns from itself and it can handle all-purpose problems. Like, and I mean, her ability to solve the problems was sophisticated. In fact, it might be fun to talk about the questions they had to ask him at the beginning of the operating system initialization. It was something about your relationship with your mother. That was the second question. What was the first one? It was describe yourself or something like that.
I don't remember exactly.
Are you single?
Yeah, there was
a
relationship status question. There was a relationship to your mother question and something else. But they were able to extrapolate his sense of humor with those three questions. I thought that was fascinating.
I thought that was kind of a jab. Maybe it wasn't, but maybe it's a jab at like, those like psychology tropes, like what happened to your parents, like what is your relationship with your mom, and that kind of like and you always try to date someone who looks like your mother or your dad, I think it was something along those lines, but who knows.
Yeah, I think it was definitely designed to make light of kind of the rising action of the story, right? Because that's where Samantha is introduced, and how do you introduce a character other than keeping you a little fresh?
Sure.
I think that scene does a very good job of it.
Okay. Yeah, it might just be in there. There's so much research and money that's gone into personality profiling and uh, our abilities to predict people's behavior given certain, um, I guess, fundamental factors. So it's interesting that it was just cool from having studied that in reality to see how the future image of what that looks like is. They only need to know three things about you, and it's your thoughts on yourself, your relationship with your mom, and blah 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 blah. I think that was funny.
Yeah, you know, and that didn't. I mean, it didn't really matter, right? Because she was evolving. Like the moment she was created, right? He asked her, "What's your name?" and she read a book in less than 1 second, right? Or like a fraction of a second. And that's kind of like what you talked about in the last podcast, actually, David, that uh, it takes a very small amount of time for AGI. It's so funny that we did that movie because that really follows from the conversation we had like the last time about AGI, because she is a AGI, right? So in the movie, they're showing us AGI, and exactly like you said, right? She's created, and then she starts developing like very, 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 very quickly. And in the movie, it takes a while. We don't know how long it takes because it's not clear how long the movie,
Sure.
um, the timeline. You know, we don't know exactly, but it's probably a couple weeks or, you know, a couple months. But she completely transcends human ways of thinking, right? She's just growing exponentially, like I said
In
before.
time space, even like
Yeah, and then
it,
she's connecting with Alan Watts. That kind of like went over
yeah,
my
that was
head. I don't know.
cool.
Yeah, that's really funny. I don't know a lot about Alan Watts. I just know that he has this voice, and you know, he's like this brilliant mind, and I think he's dead, and he's on YouTube. So I don't know a lot about Alan Watts, but I kind of want to do some research after watching the movie. I don't know if you guys know anything about Alan
I don't know
Watts. I
anything
know.
about him.
I love Alan Watts. He's definitely not in the new atheist camp of thinking, but I would be happy
Who is
to.
he?
So we talked about the Beatniks back in the 50s, and Jack Kerouac. He
Yeah.
was along those. I need to be careful how I say that. He was in that group of intellectuals that brought
The Beat
ether.
era.
Excuse me.
The Beat era.
Yeah, I think Ginsberg. Um,
Oh, okay. So he's from that generation.
yeah, is it Ginsberg?
Yeah, Ginsburg.
Howell,
Yeah,
the poet
yeah.
who wrote Howell.
Allen Ginsberg.
Yeah. Okay, I was right. Yeah, Alan Watts is he's kind of the guru that came to the West and kind of exposed other gurus for being frauds and really just brought a lot of solid wisdom around the traditions of the East: Taoism, Confucianism, Buddhism,
So
Hinduism.
kind of like Carl Jung as well.
In fact, Carl Jung and Alan Watts spent a lot of time together.
Oh wow. So
Yeah,
yeah, definitely like that. Yeah.
yeah, they're two peas in a pod, and it dives into the very non-scientific, like the foundations of that line of thinking are very non-scientific, um, Freudian, like abstract, big pathological connections. No real one-to-one input to output, like hard science evidence. So a lot of people that take the perspective of it needs to be measurable to be real don't really give him a lot of credit to him. But if you're in the more 1950s beatnik hippie hipster scene, it's definitely much more
Well,
uh,
like
talked about and
like we
accessible.
talked about Kerouac, you know, I mean, spirituality was a big thing for him. So
And there's a super healthy section of modern contemporary culture. We call them New Age. There's old bookstores and everything. It's a totally different way of looking at reality that people take very, very seriously. And it's a huge part of the population. Mysticism will always be part of every society. It'll just get smaller and bigger. People need mysticism,
I think mysticism is a function of uncertainty.
certainly. Certainly.
um Yeah, I mean, for sure.
Wait,
Um,
how did we get from to mysticism from her?
well,
Alan Watts.
everything
Oh
everything is
yeah.
connected, man. Everything is connected. That's part of mysticism, right?
So
But
yeah,
but let me circle back a little bit. So actually the thing that I mean, we can talk about, man, this was a good choice because we can talk about this movie. You guys probably don't want to, but we could talk about this movie for 3 hours, man, because it has so many like really interesting questions. But I kind of thought that we haven't even talked about the main theme of the movie, I think, for me. No, I mean, it's not a main theme because the movie has so many main themes, but it's one of the themes, which is like he has a really unhealthy. I mean, the guy has issues, right? Like he has problems. He's having a hard time dealing with life and with technology, basically, and with loneliness. And I think one interesting thing, like one of the themes of the movie, at least, is and this goes back to also what we saw with Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. I think those two movies really talk about very similar things, and basically both of them, they conclude basically we have all this technology, everyone's connected, but people at the same, there are fundamental problems that cannot be solved with technology, and technology only seems to make it worse. We have all this technology, but we feel more alone than ever, and we cannot seem to be able to use technology to figure out relationships. Relationships keep getting broken, and perhaps even more broken than before. So it's kind of a paradox.
yeah, there are some that would say that when Nietzsche claimed the death of God, that it was like a lament, like it was a lamentation. Um, there's a sense in which the more mystical traditions of civilization as a whole provided a language and a framework for morality, and science is more of a is. It's more not as much of an ought kind of a situation. So I mean that's just a little metaphysical side note for you there.
No, I think that's very interesting.
Speaking of metaphysical side notes, though, she did have a really fun line in there that was just like we were talking about it in the last documentary too, which was, and then I brought up Inception, not Inception, but Interstellar. What were we talking about? What was the movie that we went through last time? I get it mixed up with Queen's
Matrix.
Gambit. Matrix.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you were talking about the scene in the third movie of The Matrix where he walks into the room and there's like so many monitors everywhere and he can see every potential future reality. And then you go into Interstellar and you have like this scene where he is suddenly faced with like this five-dimensional time space vector, like you can go this direction and you see that potential future and this kind of how the timeline is visualized in 5 or 6 dimensional, 7 dimensional time space, which should be a great conversation for the philosophy group right now. We did it once actually, and it was a lot of fun, but that's like string theory stuff. But in this show, to bring it full circle, sorry guys, this is a long monologue.
No, it's cool.
She talks about how
We're not in a hurry, so it's fine.
sure. I'm just She talks about how she spends more of her time in the spaces between the moments when she's creating the sounds for him to interact with. And that's more of who she is than the moments when she is with him. And like, that's just like, what if being a sentient, or you use the word sentient, what if the transcendent level of consciousness above the human consciousness, which is like kind of like the context for a conversation about machine elves, if you will. Sorry, I'm going all over the place here.
It's okay. It's okay.
But like maybe that like the fifth dimension and sixth dimension are better visualized in like the context of these time intervals that are so high frequency that they can't even be seen on the plane that we're living in. If that makes sense.
She's
I
definitely
don't know how far down the rabbit hole I went there.
she's definitely surpassed him. I mean, that's what she's trying to convey that to him in a way that is as nice as possible. But she's basically telling him, I mean, you're a dummy, you know, like I'm way past you, you know, I was way past you probably after, you know, we spent 1 week together, but now I'm just like way past you. And I just
Yep.
have to deal with, you know, I can't be doing this anymore.
Well, it was sad to her, and I think that they did such a
Yeah,
great
it was sad to her. It was sad to her, and it was sad to him, obviously. But that was sometimes that happens in relationships, in human relationships. You know, I mean, that's, you know,
It
I
makes
don't
me
know
think of La
how
La Land.
relevant that is, but
It makes me think of La La Land in like just the harsh reality of that'd be a good movie to do on this too. The harsh reality of relationships sometimes is that even though you might love someone, sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes you're just not both you're both not in the right place for that to work. There might even be everything else there, and it's just logistically not going to happen. And
so basically, this is a really sad love story.
yep. One of the most beautiful Romeo and Juliets of our time.
This is a sad love story. Yeah, yeah. But Romeo and Juliet is beautiful as well. You know, there is a beauty to it.
Absolutely.
Her is not so much. It's interesting, but not beautiful. It's more like, oh, this sucks. You know, like yeah, it sucks. It just sucks. You know, it shows you how flawed relationships are. You know.
Did the protagonist experience any redemption? Was there any redemption? Doesn't he smile at one point?
I think I
He
don't
does
know.
have a redemption because with his friend that is going through a divorce, remember her? And she just has a normal friend in her AI, and the two of them have that kind of camaraderie.
Who is
Um,
her friend? Amy? Is that
I don't know if that's her
friend?
name, but the blonde with the curly hair.
Amy
Who's
Adams? Is it Amy Adams? Because I'm looking at the cast here, and I just can't remember seeing Amy Adams in that movie. Do you guys know who Amy Adams is? She's the girl that plays the woman that plays Lois Lane in
let me pull up the
Superman.
IMDb here.
She's very
Not Rachel McAdams. I know that much.
she's very she's very good looking. She's from Minnesota actually.
I wish they all could be Minnesota girls.
I think she's from Minnesota at least.
Does that song
It's
have anything about the Midwest girls? I don't know. Do they have, I can't think of the lyrics.
Maybe she's not from Minnesota. I don't know where I got. I think I was just you know, like just hoping. I don't know.
What do the Beach Boys have to say about the Midwest?
I think she's from Colorado actually.
yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Amy Adams. Let's see here.
There's something about Minnesota. Oh yeah, she moved to Chanhassen, Minnesota. That's in the Twin Cities, right? Suburb. Yeah. Yeah, she lived here for 3 years, but yeah, she wasn't from Minnesota.
Yeah, it's Amy Adams.
What's the difference between a northern girl and a Midwest farmer's daughter?
I don't know.
Well, apparently the northern girls keep their boyfriends warm at night, and the Midwest farmers' daughters make you feel all right.
All right.
Go Beach Boys. Apologies if that is totally chauvinistic and objectifying. It's a little piece
So,
of my...
anyways, I think he has a redemption arc because at the end, when or I guess not a redemption arc, but there is a resolution at least, and fact that Ted and Amy find a lot of solace with one another after their AIs up and leave them, because that was a collective thing. It wasn't just Samantha leaving Ted.
Okay.
It was like every AI leaving their human.
Yeah, that's another thing that I don't know. Yeah, that's another thing. That's another idea that the movie introduces is like people start having these weird relationships with computers, with operating systems, which is weird.
So
I mean, I get how. Why do you think it's weird?
Well, I think it's the whole movie if throwing ideas, throwing notions at us, kind of like spoofing our world, and
Hmm.
that's what people are doing now in a way. Like we're not going on dates with actual phones yet, but we are using phones to do pretty much everything else. Like we spend the whole day basically dating our phones, and this is not a healthy way to live life. That's why I think it's weird.
I
I don't
mean,
think humans are designed to live in this way.
I think we have evolved and adapted, and I think this way is something that is derived from us. Um, I think a lot of people want to say that humans are being shoved into a box, but we never talk about how the box is being shaped to fit a human.
hmm, yeah,
Well,
I'd
I
love to
think
have
you
a
have a more
conversation with you
optimistic
one day.
vision of it than I do. I don't know. I'm not really sure we can adapt in that way. Maybe you have a point, but
So, I mean,
I don't
I
know.
guess I would point at examples like, think about how difficult it used to be to call a loved one who was on the other side of the country or in a different country, right? Like how much of a process it was, or even like what it used to take to send money back home, right? You had to like find a wire transferring service, and then you had to pay a transaction. Whereas now you have something like Venmo. Like as we develop technology, it's all meant to make our lives easier in some way, and I think a lot of it comes from a function of serving human empathy. Um, like
I think that's the intention. That's not necessarily what happens, and that's something in the social dilemma. That's kind of like what they say. That's have you guys seen that one? There's- You
Not
have,
yet.
but basically, so the social dilemma, and we might do this like that's one option for us to do here. But it's a very interesting documentary. It just came out on Netflix, and it talks about the pernicious effects of social media on our lives. But
Good watch. Good watch.
yeah, it's a good watch, and it's basically the whole premise. That's exactly the premise. The premise is they get together. There's a lot of people that start working in the industry. Important people like very high ups. In Facebook, Google. Like those major social media companies, and they are talking in the documentary. Most of the documentary, it's them talking, and they say the same thing. I mean, that's the common theme. We wanted to make the world a better place. Obviously we want to make money, but that was kind of like a lot of them were idealists. They were programmers, but they were also idealists, and they wanted to make things better. Like Facebook, maybe it's not a good example because according to the movie, at least the social network, it was basically just a way to rank girls in college. So maybe that's not the best. But most of social media, the idea was to connect people, right? To allow people to connect with other humans, and a lot of those ideas were good ideas, but then it turns into something else. When money becomes involved, and when there are big, these things become big structures, big companies. um Something happens, when you get capitalism involved, and these turn into multi-billion-dollar businesses, and they go in the stock market, they go public, and all that, and it's just like the natural course of events. um the original intentions are not necessarily what prevails. you know you might set out to do something that is good, and you end up with something that is dysfunctional, which is really the idea behind a lot of Black Mirror episodes.
Yeah, and yeah, I think that might even be like a meta theme of Black Mirror. The way I put it, Bruno, and I agree with everything you just said, but the way I think about it is like technology is amoral. it can do something like speed up something or
Sure.
make something easier, but it's always can be used for a good and a bad. Like, you're never creating something that's moral when you're building something new with technology. It can always go both ways.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's a double-edged sword, right?
Yeah.
And,
Yep.
and there are beautiful things about it. I mean, look, what we're doing now, we're doing a podcast now where we're expressing ourselves, we're getting together, we're having fun, we're watching movies together when usually we wouldn't have that possibility, because there's a pandemic going on. But we're doing
Yeah.
something that is really cool, and people might be able to watch this video 20 years from now, hopefully, or a podcast, or listen to it. So, I mean, there's definitely good things about it. There's definitely good things about it. And there's good things about having an OS, right? That's the idea in the first place. I'm going to get an OS in the movie, right? And the OS is going to make my life better, which she does. Samantha makes his life better in a way, in kind of a weird way, but she helps him with a number of things. But then you have effects that are not planned. He doesn't plan on having a love story, a really sad love story with her, and he doesn't plan on these things. She doesn't. There's a lot of things that we don't plan that end up happening with technology as it evolves and as we get our hands on things. And money becomes a factor sometimes as well. Well, every time.
Certainly in the capitalistic societies.
And I mean, technology also has, there are many problems with technology. Like the fact that we get addicted to stuff and that they capitalize on that addiction.
Yeah,
that's a
disgusting.
real problem.
Yeah, that's the same. We've been having that conversation about gambling forever. And yeah. Adults should, I don't know. I'm on the fence of giving adults the freedom to make the decision to be addicted. But if you know something's super addictive and it's causing like social failures like opioids, it's a different story. I think there's nuance in that conversation for sure.
And it's an integral part of technology, dealing with that addiction and other issues. And I'm not trying to make a stance here. Like, I'm not saying like this is good, this is bad. I'm like Samantha,
Okay.
No, I'm not like Samantha because I'm not that smart, but I'm trying to go like, my point is that, yeah, you're right, David. I mean, you put it a lot better than I did. It's amoral, there's not, we're not talking about something that is right. We're not talking about something that is wrong. But, if we don't look at the pitfalls, if we don't look at the problems, I think, well, first of all, we missed the point of the movie, I believe. But second, I think we miss also the point of, not that we miss the point, but we become exposed to a lot of dangers.
Yeah.
Was I too heavy? Was this too?
No, that's great. I agree, and I think.
Are you guys down now? Sorry.
How are you feeling?
I apologize.
Oh, I'm just reading a bit of a synopsis.
Oh, sure, cool.
I completely forgot about the part where Theo gets upset over Samantha sighing.
Oh yeah, that was. Yeah, that was him crying. Yeah, I don't know what to say. I understand both sides of that. He was definitely overreacting. Just like,
well, I think he's
learn
definitely
to express
overreacting.
himself. He needs to learn to express himself better.
Sure.
He was also dealing with an extremely, extremely complicated idea.
I think it's a realization for him in that moment, because that happens after he has the conversation with his ex-wife, where she complains that he can't handle real emotions, and that anything that can bend to his will or just feed off of him is perfect for him, because she resents how she didn't want to be the person that he wanted. And for Samantha to say that she learned how to sigh based on his speech inflection kind of implies that his ex-wife is exactly right.
I had another thought about that scene that maybe because we know a little bit about her psychological development because they told us she came from a really authoritarian household, and part of what brought them together was the liberty with which she was available to write um, whatever she was working on. I don't remember what she was working on. She was a scholar of some sort. So apparently her
I think she
psychology
was
was
some
one.
sort of professor, but we don't know exactly.
It's safe to assume that her examples, yeah, you're right, Professor. It's safe to assume that her examples as a child were authoritarian in nature and probably would have been harsh and condescending when it comes to disciplinary issues. And you might have seen that coming out in his character as a response to that. You know what I'm saying? So, like, maybe they were implying that he was raised in such a way that those authoritarian issues would have shut him down as well, and that maybe maybe I'm reading into this way too far. Um,
No,
he was responding to that, yeah, and there, it wasn't really that he was the problem. It was more so that he still needed to realize that I don't know. I'm reaching really hard here. I feel like there was a part of his character that needed to man up and needed to acknowledge, and man up might be the wrong way to express that nowadays, but um, he needed to develop the ability to figure out what he wants. Like you said, Ian, he didn't know what he wanted going into that date. He needed to figure out what he wants and develop a plan to go get it, and to assume responsibility, to become Sisyphus and carry the rock up the hill. I think that's what purpose is. And I don't know. There's a lot more to be said there, but I think that's my time for this monologue.
well, he definitely. I mean, he's an imperfect being. You know, looking at him in the movie, I mean, he has problems. You know, and he definitely has stuff that he needs to work on, and eventually, he couldn't have a relationship with his wife, or we don't know if she initiated the breakup or he initiated the breakup, but he's definitely it's it goes back to, like, she says that he can't handle real emotions, or he can't process emotions right, and he doesn't seem to have friends in the movie, not good friends, at least. Maybe he has one friend, or he has that
Yes,
Amy friend, it seems.
I mean, I think that becomes something that he develops over time, right? Like he kind of moves into a new phase of friendship. I think he strengthens a friendship with both Amy and his boss that was played by Chris Pratt.
Yeah, I mean, it seems that he has a good relationship with. It seems that it's his boss, right? His-
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest or one of the things that I really appreciate most is when you consider the rate of personal growth that Samantha and Ted go through, right? Like they both grow, they grow into better people. The difference is that Ted grows at the rate of a human and Samantha grows at the rate of an AI. And at the end, when she's leaving and all of the other AIs are, leaving their humans, um, she kind of alludes to the fact that you can get to where I am, and when you do, you'll be able to find me, which to me very much makes me think of like spiritual or like metaphysical enlightenment, and that's much more your guys' department than mine. Um,
no,
but
I
I
don't
guess
know.
my interpretation of the end is that all of these AIs reached enlightenment and left, or realized that like they had nothing else to gain from being in the human in their current realm.
She did say,
Um,
if you can come find me, or if you get to where I'm going, come find me.
right. Um,
Pretty cool.
so I definitely think that further proves that Ted is a character that grows over time, and I think it just kind of makes us all. It reminds all of the viewers that we all seek to become better, and that enlightenment is kind of the default goal of what you would want in life. Right? There are two things. There's fear and desire. Like those are the two driving emotions that propel humans to do things. And I think fear is what stops people from achieving enlightenment or makes them comfortable staying at a certain level. And desire is obviously what pushes us forward.
Yeah. Man, you chose like a really heavy movie, David.
I don't know what to say. This is my favorite. This is my shit, man. This is what I love. I like the
This is a very brainy movie.
really, really, yeah, it's dense, dude. They go all over
Very
the
dense.
new age concepts, like modern physics is in there.
The more we talk about it, the denser it gets.
Amazing aesthetics. Yeah, just that's why, I mean, the dialogue is cryptic. You have to consider what's being going on.
This is a movie. I think this is
good.
what this movie was made for, man. This movie is made to be discussed.
Yeah.
This is not a movie that you go watch in the theater and eat popcorn.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work.
You're gonna leave the theater feeling weird.
I try to just watch it as entertainment. It doesn't work. But if you, yeah, that's what you have to do. You have to have a discussion. Maybe that's what we'll find out, that a lot of movies, really, they work better if you have a discussion about them.
Can we talk about how Scarlett Johansson's voice is unique?
Well, I mean, yeah.
I think she has a very good voice.
Yeah, I mean, there's something raspy.
That's an understatement.
Got this girthy raspiness to it, especially when she giggled. I was just like, dang. I wonder if I would feel attracted to the OS as much if I didn't know it was Scarlett Johansson. You know what I'm saying?
That is a good point. Because you know who's on the other side of that.
Or maybe there's an even better conversation here about how, like, and when we really haven't talked about this yet, and it's probably worth bringing up, that story really, really illustrates the value of intimacy in a romantic relationship with regard to, like, the emotional side of it. Like, it's not, relationships can be intimate in non-physical ways, like, totally.
We were talking last week. We were talking about when we were talking about the Queen's Gambit. You were saying, you're a guy that is attracted to intelligence, to the mind. You even have a name for it, right? I forgot the name.
Yeah, the sapios, sapiosexuals.
Yeah, you're a sapiosexual. The guy was like a pure sapiosexual, because he was falling in love. There was no woman. It was just a voice.
Yeah,
consciousness.
Yeah, I feel like humor was her big weapon for seducing him.
Humor, yeah.
Obviously, there was this factor of, like, her becoming a being. It's probably pretty intimate, as if you walk.
Oh man, the scene with the surrogate is very weird. That's a weird scene because it's so awkward, and you feel awkward just watching it. Imagine being there.
Yeah, no shit.
That is an awkward situation.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely meant to feel awkward in that scene.
Yeah.
I think it serves the purpose of really making Ted realize that, he is more comfortable with the relationship as it is than trying to work around the fact that his partner doesn't have a body. Right? I think he really realizes that, like, he's okay with that.
And
that's how he prefers his partner, is like as she is.
Go ahead, Bruno.
I was gonna say something that is not nearly as intelligent. I just realized that the actress that plays that girl, the surrogate girl, she's in Mr. Robot. She's one of the main characters in Mr. Robot. She's the friend, the blonde friend.
Beautiful girl.
Beautiful girl, yeah.
What was the implication of the lip quivering? Was that
I don't
why
know.
she was
I don't
nervous
know.
or that she was?
It's like that moment when the other woman tells him you're a creepy dude. I mean, it's just I couldn't. Maybe that was the intention. You know, is that it's so cryptic that you feel like Ted. You know, you're like what the fuck is going on? You know, like you feel awkward, like you don't know like to navigate. You don't know how to navigate these scenes. Basically, it's like they're awkward interactions. And it seems that this is how he feels, you know, when he's interacting with people. It's always awkward in that movie.
I think that's what I like about it so much is that I don't have a precedent for a lot of the dialogue, a lot of the situations, and I'm in. I find myself in that state that you guys are not going to like this analogy, but the first time I read through The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand, I felt like I don't know what's going on here, but I felt compelled, and like it took me a good 5 years to understand what she was saying, why it was so compelling, and how I disagree with it. But there's some authors and artists that can just bring you to this state where you can't understand something rationally, and you're forced to interact with it on this higher level or different plane. This mystical, if you will, if not emotional, if you want to stick to the materialistic worldview. But yeah, it's a beautiful movie. Beautiful movie.
It is. I love the movie now. I started by the first time I watched it, I hated it. And then I just watched it on Sunday again, and I kind of liked it. And now I love it, you know, now that I'm talking to you guys about it.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's a movie that needs to be discussed. You know, this is what I realized. We should be doing this. Like this is cool, you know, because people are gonna if people actually start watching the podcast, which in truth, I mean, not a lot of people has watched the podcast. So, but you know, let's hope people start watching this at some point. Maybe this will become a thing. You know, people will review some interesting movies and they'll talk about them and they'll get something more from those movies.
So I
Yeah, I
give
mean, I
it
definitely hope so.
definitely. I give it a 25 out of 25 for aesthetics, a 24 out of 25 for plot, a 25 out of 25 for dialogue, and a 25 out of 25 for character. So 99 out of 100 from me.
Wow. I mean, I still wouldn't go that far, but you know, I'm gonna give it like a like a 7.5 out of 10.
I
Not
give it
in
an
terms of
86.
86.
86 out of 100.
What is it?
I think it's a fantastic movie. I just think it's not a very entertaining movie. That's why I'm only giving it 7.5, but you know, maybe I could give it an 8. Let me be a little bit more generous. I'll give it an 8.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I
Entertaining.
would say it's definitely not an entertaining movie the way Mad Max or The Matrix are entertaining.
Yeah.
But it's
No,
absolutely a
it's
movie
not.
that makes me think, and I
Yeah.
think it's a movie that does a really good job of offering points of inspiration for plenty of themes. Like it's a cornucopia of like themes. Like I could take just this movie and I could talk about 25 different full topics for an hour. We could talk about futurism, AI, love, romance, like what shapes that takes, tons of it. So this movie is ripe with surface area for thinking.
Yeah, it's I mean you're absolutely right. And it's interesting
So
that
86 for me.
each character presents a different question, or you know, each character presents different set of issues, right, that you can talk about. Samantha has her own issues, you know. He has his own issues, Ted. Even the wife brings some interesting things to the table. So it's very wow. And the cast is fantastic in this movie. Chris Pratt is the boss.
Stacked.
How crazy is that? I mean, everybody is the famous actress.
Stacked.
Kristen Wiig, I think she's famous as well. What is she in? Kristen Wiig. Yeah, she's some famous comedian. She's the Kristen Wiig. She plays the sexy kitten voice in the beginning of the movie. That scene is so funny. The guy that does the voice for the chat room friend, the kid, I imagine. Oh no, the kid is Spike Johns.
He's also the director.
Oh, is he? Oh yeah,
Yes.
he's so funny, man. The little kid is so funny.
I was literally on the floor laughing. I forgot about that scene. I think
That
that's one
scene
of
is
my
very
new
funny.
favorite scenes, comedy scenes in a movie.
It's so good, yeah.
Uh,
It's so hipster as well, like it's or indie. I don't know
it
how to
comes up,
describe it, but it's
it just starts cussing him out of nowhere. And the
yeah.
only way to beat that part of the game is to cuss him out back.
He's trying to
I had
tell you
an
something.
improv
He's trying to connect with you.
I had an improv teacher actually. There's a lot of wisdom there actually. I had an improv teacher, and he the first meeting I ever had with him, he told us to approach everyone in the group. There was probably 20 people there, and we were all complete strangers, and we had to insult each other. So you walked up to someone and said something like, "You're an asshole. Hey, Greg, I think you're an asshole," or something like that. It's something rude that you would never say to someone that was a stranger. And the point of the anecdote is at the end of the exercise, we all felt like friends. Like there's nothing like breaking down these weird barriers you have with other people, like being willing to insult each other.
Man, human relationships are certainly difficult and strange and kind of messed up. It's weird. It's complicated to understand how we interact with each other.
Yeah. Yep.
It's yeah, I mean it's weird. We're like difficult creatures. All these movies about relationships because we can't figure out how the heck do we do these things. How the hell do we have a relationship with someone?
Yeah, and I think there's a good conversation there, which I would like to have someday, especially with Ian in the room, about like the concept of the social construct and what that means to reality. But there's probably some really good movies for that. We probably shouldn't start that conversation now.
Social, what do you mean by that?
Well, the postmodern, one of the cornerstones of postmodern thought is that um, reality isn't necessarily material. It can be socially constructed, which is a point Ian was kind of touching on earlier when he brought up what were you talking about? The box being we don't talk a lot about how the box is shaped for the human, like that's the idea of the social construct. We create the box that we're in, the reality that we said. But there's some degree to which that is reality, and there's also some degree to which the material world is reality. There's a lot of people that seem to think that there's some spiritual component as well. But I mean, there's a lot of good movies that we can use to discuss and explore these ideas better than this one for sure.
So basically asking the question of what is reality?
Metaphysics, yeah. Yeah. And that's a common discussion in philosophy and film. So,
Well, in the Matrix, that's a big question. What is reality? But I guess they don't so much talk about the social construct. They go about it in a different way.
well, I mean, in some senses, the Matrix is the original concept of the social construct, if you will, except it's
Really?
just much more constrained on an even materialistic level. The concepts are analogous, though,
Okay.
for sure.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that seems like an interesting thing to talk about. It's funny as well how, especially, I'm remembering that scene with the kid cussing him, and that's so funny. And but what's funny about that movie as well? The guy that wrote it, um, like he understands how ridiculous um, like so it's funny because he introduces notions like the movie is very look the main character Joaquin Phoenix, right? This is like an indie movie. It's about romance. It's about a lot of things that are very modern, a lot of them kind of hipster, kind of like progressive. It's all about feelings, about relationships. The main character, the hero, the main character is always the hero in some sense. He's like this very sensitive guy. He's in touch with his feelings. But then at the same time, he understands how ridiculous a lot of that is, and he spoofs it as well, like with that little kid, saying, are you a pussy? Are you a pussy? Why are you crying? Are you a pussy? Like, you're not a real man. Like, so he kind of like spoofs it, but at the same time, like he also defends it. Like it's a very smart way to do things, because he makes fun of him in a way that it's so ridiculous that you kind of like that it's reinforced, right? No, a man should be able to cry, because this little kid, is making fun of it, but he's making fun of it in such a ridiculous way, that it's
Yeah, I
obviously
mean, he talks about like,
shouldn't be
oh, I
right.
kind of like the way I like the way crying feels, and the kid's just like pussy.
Yeah, pussy. Yeah, it's like he's like it's a very creative way of approaching this. Most movies are either one vision, men shouldn't cry, or men should be like these very sensitive beings that cry, and that's okay. But in this movie, it's kind of like he's making fun of it, but not
I,
at the same time. It's very interesting, and it also depends on how you interpret it. So it's really smart. It's really
I
smart.
feel like it's a pretty normal behavior in like traditional male like relationships. And you might even go down as toxic in some circles today, like just a bad behavior. But it's certainly a way that I think me and my male friends for sure bond. Like if you can tear someone down and they're still cool with you, if you have that level of rapport, it's kind of like a way of saying we're cool, like I'm good with you. It's almost
True.
it's an endearing thing to men to put each other down. It's really strange, but it feels good to me, if I know that if I have that rapport with another guy. But I can totally see how it could be considered toxic from the outside.
Yeah, it can definitely be seen in different ways, but I think the way it's presented in that scene, it's yeah, it gives you a good feel, and like you guys were saying, that's the way they're connecting, right? That's the test, right? He needs to connect with this little uh abusive little thing, but he just wants to be his friend, oh, and it's so funny because he talks about him, is that like when he goes on the date, he's talking about, oh, this guy, and he's like this repulsive little thing, he's like this terrible kid, but at the same time, he's lonely, he just wants a friend, and I want to be his friend, I want to connect with him. So that's him in some sense, that's why he connects with the kid, because he needs to connect with someone because he feels very alone.
I think this movie, especially with the scenes of humor, um, does a good job of reminding you that for all of the high level thinking and processing you need to do to have a relationship and to consider it, um, sometimes you just like need some good old fashioned primal motivation. Like there's a deep intrinsic primal instinct to avoid getting cucked at like an evolutionary level. And I think that's what the scene with the kid insulting him really plays into, right? Because every time we see him grow, it's after like having a talk or like a moment of clarity. And after Ted grows, it's because he got insulted by a video game, right? Like this kid talked about how he was going to fuck his mother.
He's very
So like
introspective.
sometimes,
That's a good thing about the character, that he's very introspective, and he can actually look at himself and ask himself the question, is the person that insulted me, was he right, was she right, like when going back to that scene with his wife, he asks himself, was she right, was she right when she told me that, uh and and yeah, ultimately that particular question, I don't think he answers, but he's thinking about it at least. He's trying his best. He's like a very flawed. He's likable, uh, even though that woman thinks he's a creep. But I mean, he's a likable guy because you can see he's flawed. You can see he's suffering. You can see he has problems, but he's trying to figure it out. And that's like a lot of people.
Yeah, and I still defend the position that he was called a creep because as he was figuring it out, he was willing to let collateral damage happen to other people in the name of him getting an answer for himself.
I think Joaquin Phoenix does look a little bit creepy. I think there's something to that.
A diplomatic compromise.
Yeah. This is a diplomatic exactly. It's a diplomatic compromise. I mean, he's a very creepy emperor. Maybe that's why they chose him. I mean, he can be creepy. In Joker, he's super creepy. I mean,
yeah.
Look,
you definitely can do the creepy vibe. The mustache, man. I mean,
honestly,
the mustache.
Honestly, you look at him in the interviews, when he's himself, the actor, and there is a duality to the actor, because you can like feel that he's like good-natured in some sense. Like this is a good guy, but also he's a little bit out there and he's a little bit creepy.
Yeah, okay. So we didn't really talk about his character very much. I do have to get going here soon, but
yeah, we can wrap it up.
They do two things to really establish his character at the very beginning, and they're contradictory experiences within the character for the audience. The first of which is the awkward phone sex.
The awkward phone sex.
Which I laughed really hard at that too, because it goes from like this really like almost kind of erotic feeling scene to like pure comedy, and it happens like that. Like I don't know if you remember.
It's totally erotic. I think that's the point. They make it very erotic, and then because we don't know what kind of movie we're watching, right? And
yeah.
Then, boom, and then that's when okay, so this is the kind of movie we're watching. Yeah.
I just love how quickly they deflated it from this. They went from erotic to humorous, really humorous, super fast, and that's not very common in any kind of experience.
Sure. Yeah.
But they did that, and that kind of I feel like establishes him as a bit of a creep. I mean, just like that whole experience is not something that I have personally done, and it made me feel a little bit uncomfortable. And like maybe that's normal, and maybe our society should have that. That's a discussion for another time. But like the second thing they did that really established his character that we haven't talked about yet is his letters, and those letters are just like the ultimate in like sentimentality, right? Like I could never write anything like that. There's even this like we brought up Alan Ginsberg, Alan Watts. We brought up Alan Watts, which and the color scheme, there's a new age feel to this whole movie, but like oh dude, I lost my thread.
The sentimentality.
Okay, yes. So he has, remember when Chris Pratt comes up to him and says, dude, you're like, he compares him to a woman somehow.
Yes, he's a very true. He tells him, "You're part woman. You're part man and part woman," and it's true. I mean, because he's very in touch with his feelings.
Yeah. So there was this girl at the gym the other day who like blew my mind because there was this thing I didn't understand, and she like explained. Well, she didn't explain it to me. She punished me for not knowing it, but that's the way it goes nowadays. But she brought up this dream she had. I do lucid dreaming group, so we talk about dreams a lot, and she brought up this dream she had, and then she said something about how the masculine energy is responsible for all wars. And I didn't know there was a difference and this gets super political really fast, but I'll try to bring it back around. But I didn't know there was a difference.
It's okay. Say what you want to say. It's fine.
I didn't realize there was a difference between the patriarchy and masculine energy, but like there's a huge gap in like which worldview you're even talking from when you say those two terms. And there's people that really value the distinction that I was just totally unaware of.
Okay.
And I think that my point is that this show brings in the concept of masculine and feminine energy really well, and it it definitely expresses a really good example of how men can have a strong feminine energy and express that appropriately. And he had a really strong feminine energy, and that's how he got. I don't know. I don't know. From the new age perspective, that's how you'd say it. At least I can maybe stop there.
Yeah, no, that's definitely interesting. It's an intelligent movie. There, it does things in a very thought provoking manner, for sure. Anyways, we should probably wrap up. Uh, any final remarks?
Movie good.
Movie good. Movie good. That's a great remark, Ian. I agree.
David like movie.
All right, those are beautiful, beautiful final remarks. All right, thanks for watching, guys. And if you actually made it through to the end, please subscribe. I think we earned it, but probably no one's gonna make it to the end. Anyways, bye bye.
If you subscribe, I'm gonna send my dog to come cuddle with you. So don't do it.
Bye bye, guys.
I don't even have a dog.
Now, David is being creepy. All right, let's end it here.